Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Brainstorm Brewery. Now, I saved this for actually special episodes, but this week is a very special episode. We are joined by probably the biggest guests we've had in any time that any of you can remember, and possibly ever. We've got Gavin Verhey with us, a senior game designer and product architect. I got that right, at Wizards of the Coast. How's it going, Gavin?
It's going great. I'm glad you remembered that mouthful. That's so
I had
much
to write
keep
it
in
down.
mind.
Don't worry.
Oh, yeah. Whenever your job title goes over 3 words, it's just like, yeah, you don't have I don't know what you do anymore. Like, you're a senior business democracy analyst. Like, what does that even mean, you know? So I'm glad that mine has the word game in it, though. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's better than just being a boring business guy or something, right? You get to play Magic cards for a living.
Would you put that on your business card? Hey, John Fishman, boring business guy.
You know, I feel like that's a good way to get noticed. Like, if someone hands me a card and it's like, Job Fishman, boring business guy, LLC, I'm like, you know what? Yes, you have a good sense of humor. I would hire that.
It's Elon Musk's business card.
3 weeks later in the shower, you're like, John Fishman. Why do I remember that name forever?
And I'm not sure if it was the business card or the last name Fishman, but one of the two things definitely did it.
Good for him building a brand. So
Fishman's out there hustling while the rest of us are just dicking around with a podcast.
Yeah,
he missed his opportunity as a fisherman, though. I feel like
I missed his calling a little bit. Yeah.
Well, welcome to the fishing podcast. It's so great to be on it. I'm glad I came to the right place. I want to talk about my big base and all my dandans.
I don't even know what that means.
They're magic cards, DJ. Dandans
was the first
anyways, right?
Yeah, Dan. Y'all know Dan.
DJ
right?
was born in 2007.
Yeah, DJ's a kid.
I didn't hear what the first card name was.
Well, the first one wasn't a card name. That was the trick. But the second one was a card name.
Oh, yeah, I know what Dan is. That was the card that Puka Trade used to trade cards with each other. And then one day, everybody traded enough Dans that the card jumped up in price and everyone freaked out about it.
Wait, I didn't know about that. That's an interesting
Dan
story.
was their
They used it as like the... Yeah.
Nothing like revitalizing old Puka Trade stories for the podcast here.
We wanted this episode to be evergreen, so let's,
let's
throw shade at the beginning.
Here's the big question, DJ. How do you spell Dan? Don't look it up.
Is D A with the little hat on it?
It does have a hat on
dash? D A with a hat on it? N?
I was just gonna go phonetically, like just DAN, but I assume that's a trap.
Yeah.
Great work. You got the little hat. The little hat is easy to miss. But there is no dash, I'm afraid. Sorry.
Yeah.
Leaving out the dash, that's enough to get eliminated in the script spelling bee, which is the only B that matters.
By the way, please, the hat is only on the second A. Okay? It's not on the first A.
That's true. You got to get that right. All right, I won't lie. For the first time ever...
Well, I only took 3 years of Arabic, so...
Yeah. For the first time ever, I'm actually looking at this card art, and I see now that it might be more about the fish underneath the boats, rather than it's just a card image of 2 empty boats.
Well, but right, so if you go back and look at the original version from the dark, I think, right? The card is so dark. The card is so dark that you can't really see the fish under.
Right, exactly.
It's not until the time-shifted printing.
I just thought it was a dude.
It's Arabian Nights, right? Because
it's Arabian Nights, yeah.
Right, of course. Right, so if you go back to the Arabian Nights printing, you can barely even see the fish, right? It's like, oh, it's just like this watery thing. But then in the time-shifted version, it really, really pops, and you see a little bit better.
I mean, it also helps that the time-shifted version says fish on it, right? Instead of summon Dan.
Right, because you're like, Dan, and there are 2 boats, right? It's like, well... What is a Dan? Clearly a boat. There's 2 of them. Dan. Done.
Right.
That deal
yeah. Like, I don't know about...
We learned from Innistrad that a dude in a boat is a 5/5. Like, clearly.
What card is that?
Deadeye Navigator.
Oh. I'd say I don't know much about Arabian Nights, so I guess like ancient Middle Eastern boats or whatever, but I just assumed that one of those was a Dan. And the other one was the other Dan.
They're both Dans.
Right. Basic Dan math. You know, Dan plus Dan.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dan. Sense. I'm Dan with a hat over the A in my name, but I pronounce it identically. And we're Dan. Dan.
That's my favorite podcast, actually. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, fair enough.
The 2 Dan. Dan squared. That's what it is, actually. It's a squared.
Well, that's what this podcast is all about. That's why we brought you on.
Yeah, this is the art podcast.
I just realized something.
We're
I
here to
just
talk about
realized
art.
something.
Okay, what?
We spent far too long, listeners. We spent far too long trying to get this video to work. It's been there haven't been like a ton of technical difficulties, but there've been a few. There've been a non-zero number. And normally when I do podcasts, there isn't video. I'm just like speaking and people hear me. But now there's video and no one can see it. In fact, the other co-hosts can't see me right now. I could
Actually, we can see
sabotage
it
the
because
whole
Can't see
thing.
you. That's probably not good.
Funny
right?
story, actually. There, you left your screen share on, so we're
Yeah.
looking at you right now.
Oh,
No, don't turn it
Well,
off.
okay.
No. Oh,
That's fine. I'll just leave it
I
on.
was
It's
hoping to
actually
see
good to have it
classified
on.
wizard stuff on your desktop.
Woo, close call.
Return to Kamigawa. That can't be good.
That's great. But anyway, the important thing, I guess now you will see along with me. I just realized, so it's been a busy couple weeks. I've been traveling a lot. I've only had, since the beginning of May, I've been home for a total of 4 weekends.
Oh,
so I've been on the go a lot.
Jeez.
So my dishes did not get done last week because I was traveling.
Yeah.
So I had to get a glass of water for this podcast. And a lot of my days are like, come home, flop, go to sleep, wake up, go to work, etc. So I was a little low on dishes tonight. So I went into my cupboard to grab a cup to fill up with water because we're talking on a podcast. And I just wanted to go take a sip. And you're all going to see it here in a second, listeners. Just in time, 'tis the season. This is my snowman cup. Look how adorable this is.
Oh, it's seasonal.
So it's very on brand for the middle of October.
Well, hey, if the stores are going to put Christmas decorations up in the middle of October,
As
why
long
not
as you
drink
got
out of a mug?
pumpkin spice in there, you're good to go.
I mean,
Okay, so what do you guys think? So for Halloween this year, I don't know when this podcast is going to go up, but Halloween's around the corner. For Halloween, here's what I'm thinking of for my costume. Because I haven't seen anyone do this ever. Maybe you have, and I want someone to tell me if someone else has done it and if it's dumb or not.
Okay.
Okay. I want to go as Santa Claus for Halloween. Is that ridiculous?
Is this like a
that funny?
Krampus sort of thing, or like?
No, just like a legit
Just
Santa.
like regular Santa.
So I have a bunch of parties to go to,
Uh-huh.
and I'm gonna look on Facebook, and I'm gonna see who all the people going are, and I'm gonna buy them all gifts and like write little name tags on them,
Oh,
and
God,
put them
you're
in
such
my
a good
sack,
person.
and then show up to the party and walk around with the naughty nice list, handing everyone gifts. Some will be coal, of course, and it's like your MySpace top 8 or something, right? Like, they're on the top 8, they get coal. But like then I buy a present for everyone else, then just walk around the party handing out presents, pretending to be Santa. Is that a great idea or a horrible costume idea?
That
I
is
think
the
it depends
best
on whether or not
idea.
you're on the top 8.
No, that sounds like the greatest idea.
That's a great idea. That's
You're
the most wholesome thing I ever heard.
Exactly,
I feel bad
like,
drinking
you're just
beer
so
on
much
this podcast.
I feel like a
Nicer.
horrible person now
You're so much nicer
for
than
not
us.
doing that.
Like I have a.
My gimmick for Halloween costumes, and I started doing this 3 years ago now, is all my Halloween costumes are interactable in some way. So they do something unique. For example, one year I went as Instagram, and I had a Polaroid camera, and I took pictures of people and handed it to them, right? And that was awesome because everyone got like a take-home thing.
Yeah, that's
that was
great.
super cool. So I'm always into like trying to find some new weird take on a Halloween costume, and as I went through the easy ideas, it's getting more and more challenging. So
Wow, I have a party to go to this weekend. I'm just trying to get out of wearing a costume at all because I'm boring and not fun like that.
I was just going to go as a slutty nurse again.
Yeah, you think you haven't played that one out yet, Jason?
It's a different slutty nurse costume than last year.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's the important.
I was a
part.
slutty vet tech, and I think there's like a difference in the color of scrubs.
And in the kind of things
I bet in your closet you have a good costume with just things in your closet and stuff you have around the house.
My perennial is just I always go as an ice cream cone.
Neat.
Yeah.
Wow, I actually don't know that I've ever dressed up for Halloween, but Marianne's trying to make me this year for a party.
Way to bring that riff to a screeching halt, DJ.
I'm an ice cream cone, guys. Next year I might
All
go
right,
as a
cool.
pumpkin.
I was right.
I might go as most likely to eat lunch alone, which means I'll just blow up my yearbook photo and hang it around my neck.
Wow.
Oh! I just had an idea. So you go as an ice cream cone, and you blow up a yearbook photo and hang it around your neck, and you go as like Flava Flav, the flavorful ice cream cone, right? Because you got like the gold chain.
Yeah, and you got that's a clock. You got to have a clock, right?
Yeah. But your Flavor Flav.
Yeah,
like, you're known for
that's
your
good. That's
flavor
good. It's way
because you're
different.
edible. Yeah. It's non-brand infringing. So
That's
you
important.
can sell that stuff.
He's very litigious. You should watch out.
Yeah, I mean, he probably did trademark it, man. VH1 probably did.
All of our listeners are so glad they tuned in for this episode. Do you guys edit this at all or not?
Definitely not, man.
We're not going to now.
2 weeks ago, we spent like 30 minutes talking about Scooby-Doo, and our listeners loved it. Except for the ones who didn't, but whatever. They're gone
They didn't
now.
vocalize.
They're gone now.
No, they did. They literally went on Reddit and recommended people not listen to our podcast.
Anyways, I guess we can move on.
Do you guys
Talk
know the
a little
episode?
magic.
Do you guys know the movie? One more diatribe.
Yeah,
Do you guys
of
know the
course.
movie Brewster's Millions?
Brewster's
No.
Millions, yeah.
No.
It's Richard Pryor.
Right. So the premise of Brewster's Millions, for you who probably aren't familiar with it, which is most of you, is these people are given an absurdly large amount of money with the premise that if they can spend all the money legitimately, like not just by donating it, but legitimately find a way to spend all the money within a week, I think it is, something like that, they'll get, like, I don't know, billions of dollars. So they're trying to spend money as quickly as possible, and they just can't spend their money fast enough, right? It's this huge, huge thing. And you think it'd be
Interesting.
easy, especially in the 80s, like in a pre-Amazon era,
Uh-huh.
to spend a bunch of money.
I would
So what
assume
I was
that.
imagining in my head is this, and this is literally impossible to make happen, but it was a very entertaining like premise for some bad TV show of this like really popular podcast that has to lose all of its listeners, and like how do you just hemorrhage listeners over time?
6
Like,
years
what
in
are
the making
best
right here,
ways-
buddy.
Yeah, right. It's like, you start with tons and tons of listeners, and then over time you just like find these topics. You're like, you've got like 3 weeks to hemorrhage as many listeners as possible. It's like a really fun variance. Anyway, speaking of podcast hemorrhaging listeners, let's get on to the main part.
Yeah,
of this.
so-
I had 10 minutes of Brewster's Millions material, if you don't mind.
So
Apparently that was a 1945 movie that was remade in 1985 with Richard Pryor.
Yeah, the 85 one is the one you want to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Jason's seen every movie, no matter how obscure.
That's the one where he tries to lose all this money by betting on absurdly long odds on a lacrosse game, and he accidentally wins.
lol.
And it paid out like 1,000 to 1 or something stupid like that.
That's funny. All right, so
I'm super into film. You can't see, but my entire living room is themed like a theater. I guess you can see the red curtains right there. So
no, that's really cool,
yeah.
actually.
yeah, right behind me over on this side is a gigantic projector set. It's great. Anyway, all right, Magic the Gathering. You know what's great? Speaking of theaters, let's talk about Magic the
I
Gathering.
guess we can talk about Magic.
We need
the
to ease
Gathering.
into it,
Yeah.
you know?
That's a
This
Brainstorm
podcast
Brewery
isn't like a
segue.
swimming pool. It's like a hot tub. You don't just cannonball into the hot tub. You got to ease.
That's a good analogy, Jason. It'll leave you
Thanks.
burned. Listening to this podcast will leave you burned much like a hot tub if you're not careful.
You can't get burned in a hot tub, Corbin. It's liquid. You would get scalded.
Oh, shut up. What if
You know
touch...
what else scalds you? Scalding tarns.
It does
And now
do
we're talking about Magic the Gathering.
That's a Marcel level
Yeah.
transition right there. All right, so what we want to do this
He would have
week...
pronounced scalding tarn wrong somehow.
What is it with Wizards employees on our podcast and talking about fetch lands?
All right, so what we're going to do this
Oh,
week...
all right, don't tell anybody, but they're in Cons of Tarkir.
Whoa!
Whoa.
Between us.
If you look, the signs are there, I believe was my favorite quote from that episode. So anyways, what we want to do this week, for those who don't know, Gavin is, and I would assume that you know, but Gavin is a longtime player, writer, all of the above. When I first got into Magic a decade ago, Gavin's articles were some of my favorite that I ever read. So, you know, shout out for those. It was great back in the day, right? When you were writing before you went to work for Wizards. So now you're at Wizards and you are, you know, you have this long title, you have a lot of stuff. You are sort of one of the people who's out there in terms of talking about, say, Commander or Brawl, or some of these things. So I guess just sort of before we get into sort of the nitty gritty of what we want to ask about, right? What's the just transition been like for you over the last couple years to go from a game you grew up your whole life playing and loving, just, you know, now you're not only making it, but you are responsible for helping shape the perceptions of how everyone else looks at the game.
Well, you know, now that you mention it, what day is it that we're recording this? Is it October
22nd?
Oh, it's the 22nd. I totally missed it.
No, it's the 23rd for us.
It
It's
is.
the 22nd for you.
Well, the 21st was my 7-year anniversary at Wizards of the Coast.
Oh, wow.
Can you believe that?
Wow.
7
You just
years?
made me feel so old.
It's pretty wild. Yeah, tell me how I feel. It feels like it's weird. My pro Magic career feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah. For sure.
But you know, it really has been wild, and you get used to so many different things being on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I miss my days playing as a pro quite a bit. Like, there's nothing like traveling around to Grand Prix, now Magic Fest.
That's right.
And playing in them and, like, meeting all your friends and seeing them every week. And I miss that lifestyle so much. And if I could still play in competitive tournaments, I would absolutely go and do that. But, man, it is awesome walking into a room every day and being surrounded by some of the smartest people I've ever met, working on a game we all passionately care about, and getting to make Magic cards. Like, seeing the reactions of people. I don't know what's more fun, spoiler season as a player or spoiler season as a designer, when you see everyone reacting to the cards that you've made. It is so much fun. But it really requires you to think about the game in a totally different way, which is, like, when any of us are sitting down at a table, we're drawing hands and we're trying to figure out how to beat the opponent, right? Like, we're sitting down and trying to figure out how to smash your opponent. And you have to switch your mindset a little bit to, when you draw your hand and start playing, am I having fun? What cards are causing problems? What could I change about these cards? And just that simple mindset of this game is alterable is such a different thing to think about. Because when you're playing Magic, you just assume it's all a given, right? You're like, okay, I cast my lightning bolt, it does 3 damage. That's just how Magic works. And when you're playtesting, it's like, imagine if you could change anything about any of the cards on the battlefield right now, what would you change? And that's just a super daunting thing to think about.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, that sounds pretty crazy. I mean, so what are the, as much as you can talk about, I guess, I'm sure everyone has input on a lot of things, but you sort of are right up there with the planning committee, I guess, or whatever the term is inside the building, for Commander, right? You've put a lot of effort and time into Commander. Is that sort of where most of your time gets taken up these days, or kind of what's at the risk of giving away too many details that you can't give us, what's your sort of average day look like with what you're working on?
Yeah, so, going back to that absurdly long 5-word title,
right.
Senior game designer.
Yeah, so that's what I'm asking, right? Like, what does that mean?
Right, so the senior part means that I'm just old. I'm old now. The game designer part means that I design, part of what I do is designing what cards do, working on sets, coming up with new abilities, things like that.
I thought you were going to say game designer means I design games, and I was going to laugh so hard.
Well, fine, if you want to put it like a simple thing.
You just troll everybody on the podcast.
Senior means that I'm senior. Game designer means I design games. What a great question, Corbin.
The project architect part is the thing that is probably a little less understood and the hardest to explain. But if you think about game designers as like, you'll have a lead designer of a set, and they'll own the set, and they'll make all the cards for that set, or, with their team, make all the cards for that set. The architect is like a level above them, and is kind of the vision holder for all of it. So, like, with, say, Commander 2017, if I was architecting that, which I didn't, but if I was the architect on that product, what I would do is be like, okay, what you're doing this year is tribal. As the designer, you're going to figure out the tribes,
right?
But I'm telling you it's tribal because we've looked at the long-range vision of where we want Commander to go and decided tribal is where we want to be. And then maybe you come back with your tribes. You're like, okay, we're looking at these 4. And I'm like, okay, well, these 3 sound pretty good, but this one, I just know a little bit of what we're doing in the future. That doesn't quite sound right to me. Can you change that? And so how it's actually played out with Commander 2017, because I was the lead designer of Commander 2017, and I had a project architect on my project, of course. And so when it started, I was told it was tribal. And that the goal here was that we're going to tie forward to Ixalan and have an Ixalan tribe be there, or potentially somehow tie back to a previous block like Amonkhet. We did talk about doing zombies for a little while, Esper zombies to sync up the Innistrad and Amonkhet zombies. But instead we're like, okay, let's throw forward. And so I had the pick of any of the tribes that were happening with Ixalan to go with, and I ended up going with Vampire. So it's like, okay, they kind of set the vision, they lay out the canvas, and then I get to paint in the canvas. And then the architect is also there to help nudge you along the right direction, like making sure you're hitting all of your checkpoints, making sure that if things go awry, you start heading in the right direction. So it's kind of the architect's job to keep things on track and use their knowledge, having done it a bunch of times before, to make sure you're steering the correct way. So I led design Commander 2017 and 2018, and then going forward for Commander projects, I'm actually mostly the project architect on them. So now that's kind of, I lead up that whole thing, and it's up to me to think about what's important in Commander, what kind of decks we should be making, all that kind of stuff going forward. So the short answer to your question, is yes, but I like long answers.
Right.
So,
well, I mean, one of the great things about Commander over the last couple years is how it does tie in, right? You know, it was really cool that we got vampires to go along with the Ixalan vampires, and there's just been a lot more of those tie-ins to everything. I don't know. It's just, you know, more synergy across everything the company's doing. I mean, so with that said, you've obviously been pretty deep in
the stuff you open in new sets goes with the deck you built most recently, which I think people really appreciate.
Yeah, it's just smart. Yeah. So I mean, with that said, you've obviously been pretty deep in Commander the last couple of years. You're clued into the community, all of that. When Wizards looks at Commander right now, when you look at Commander, what the Commander decks, I assume, I mean, we don't know, I guess, but they come out every year. I would assume they've been very popular. People love them. Are they, when you sit down to design them, do you build them with a bunch of different audiences in mind? Do you build them with the idea that we want these to be aimed at new players to get into the format, or is it for people who want reprints? Or what's kind of the philosophy towards just designing those decks since you've sat in that designer chair the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of masters that these decks have to serve,
right,
and it's important that they can hit them. And the good news is, with 4 different decks in each release, you can kind of aim different ones at different kinds of players.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you look at 2017 as an example, like the Wizard deck is like a super spiky deck.
Right.
Spiky being, you know, the traditional Timmy Johnny spike model. It's like, okay, well, it's really a control deck, and we made it that way because we figured some players might not buy into the tribal theme. They're like, yeah, tribal, not my bag, I'm just going to skip it. And the idea of the Wizards deck was, okay, yeah, there's some tribal stuff going on here, but it's actually kind of just a blue, black, red control deck. It's funny, actually. A feedback I got quite often, I'd say from like 80% of play groups, 70 to 80% of play groups, I'd get the feedback of like the Wizards deck can't win. Like it just was way weaker, can't be the other deck. And then for maybe like 20% of the play groups, we got feedback of like the Wizards deck is unbeatable, can't ever beat it. And I think it has a lot to do with the skill level of the player who's playing it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we try and track pretty carefully too. So, but yeah, look at 2017 as an example. Like the Vampires deck and the Cat deck are generally a little more straightforward, right? Like play guys, whip them, or, you know, enhance them in some way, so a newer player can latch onto those. And of course, like Cats and Vampires are super easy to latch onto.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense. Dragons is Dragons to me is just a total home run. Like every player type loves dragons, so it's kind of unfair. But, you know, for the enfranchised Commander player especially, like, it's just like, sweet, I get to drop dragons on people. It's got that Timmy feeling, what's not to love. And then once again, you have the Wizards deck as the spiky deck. As far as, but then, of course, you have to think about the established Commander players. And what those players care about are really 2 things. And it's reprints and new cards.
Yeah.
And we really try and do our best job as possible to hit those where we can. And some years I think we've definitely done better than others, and we're always trying to learn and move forward. But we've been monitoring the community a lot, and especially with the new cards for 2018, for example, we tried to address certain niches that people have been asking for with some of those new cards. And, you know, cards like Eureka, which is a super popular card.
The card is terrifying.
It's also incredibly strong, as it turns out. But that was made because people, first of all, I'm a huge Kamigawa fan. Trust me, if you have an inside mold for the Return to Kamigawa set, it's this guy right here. But people have been asking for a blue-black legendary ninja, so we gave it to them. And as we start becoming more of a data-driven company, which we kind of are now, we changed CEOs a couple years ago, and our new CEO is super into data. We've been doing a ton of just like analyzing what people want, and trying to give that to them. And sometimes we're going to hit, sometimes we're going to miss. But as long as we learn from our misses and use those to try and make more hits in the future, that's what's important to me.
I think the best way to mess up is ask people what they want. I think all you can do is just give them options and let them select it.
Well, Magic players especially, right?
Yeah.
There's this quote I love by Neil Gaiman, and I'm not going to get it 100% correct, but it's basically along the lines of, when someone tells you something that is wrong, or the kind of thing they want, they're almost always right. When they tell you how to fix it or what exactly that thing is, they're almost always wrong. And as a designer, it's up to me to listen to all the player feedback and be like, here's what I don't like, or here's the kind of thing I want, but then give them the right thing instead of just the thing that they ask for. Because players ask for a lot of things, and yeah, sometimes what they literally ask for is correct. Don't get me wrong, I'm not discounting that. But a lot of times there's tools we have in our toolbox that they're not even familiar with.
Right.
That we can kind of pull out and use at our disposal.
Well, this next one's a little tough, a little tougher of a question, I guess.
You know what? Here's what I want, guys. Just bring it on. I'm here to answer the hard-hitting questions. I'm happy to be on the show. And ship me the hard goods, and I'll do my best to answer
All
them.
right,
I mean,
sounds good.
I, as the owner of this line, I can take it.
So, I mean, you talked about listening to player feedback and reading all the Reddit threads, all the Twitter comments, all that, and the response to the 2018 decks this year was definitely not what the 2017 decks or 2016 decks were. There was a lot of negativity around the Jund Lands deck. There was a lot of confusion about the Esper Miracles deck. And about just the perceived power level compared to the MSRP. I mean, the MSRP went up by $5, and a lot of people just seem to think that the power level wasn't there to justify that. Do you have any thoughts on that specifically?
Yeah, totally. I mean, first of all, a few things. One thing I want to say is the 2018 deck still did awesome. Like, I think well, I don't want to...
Oh, everyone said they weren't going to buy them, and then they bought them.
Yeah,
that's what happened at my store, at least.
Yeah. So I know some people believe, like, Commander 2018 is a failure, it didn't sell or something. I want to clear that up. Commander 2018 did extremely well. And it's not just me saying that. It really did. I don't have the stats in front of me at this moment, but I wouldn't be surprised if 2017 and 2018 were our two best-selling Commander sets of all time. With that said, we're always trying to learn. And I feel like in 2018, there's a couple things that happened, some good, some bad. I feel like the new cards, for the most part, did a pretty good job. As the lead designer of 2018, I'll actually stand by a lot of the new cards. Are there things I would change? Absolutely. And there is no lead designer of any set ever that I wouldn't change things about. Like Battle Bond a few months before, which people generally lauded as a fantastic set. There are tons of things I would change about that set. And Commander 2018 is no exception. Like, if I could do it over again, I would probably change the Spider to be more of a Lands Matter guy. Although that's just a weird example because internally everyone loved that card, and then man, it just if we had another, it didn't work out that way externally, right? So it's hard sometimes. But yeah, there's some cards I would certainly change. But on the whole, I feel like the new cards were well. I feel like where things really where we could have done better was the reprints. And I've heard that feedback over and over again, and I've read through so many Reddit threads and so many Twitter to the point where people at work are like, what are you doing to yourself? And I'm like, no, like I really want to learn. Like, I don't take this as vitriol against me or anything. It's like, I want to learn and get better and make this product line as good as possible. So going forward, you can definitely expect a higher caliber of reprints, I would say, in future Commander releases. And it's something that we really want to make sure that players enjoy. And we're looking at it pretty deeply right now. So, well, I mean, there's some things we have to make sure that there are ways for the deck to evolve and expand. We never want to just sell you a deck that is a finished destination point, because it's important that there's more cards you can go and pick up and modify your deck with. And we have to be careful about, okay, if this isn't going to go and say a master set later on, we're not putting it into a commander set to make it something players don't want from a master set. Right. But with that said, there is more room to put in reprints, and I feel like, 2018 could have been a little stronger on the reprint angle. I don't think it's nearly as rough as some people online were making it out to be, but it could have been stronger, absolutely. And we learned from that, and going forward, we can make that better, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll say this since obviously you can't, but Magic players like to complain, and with the $5 MSRP increase on it, there was always going to be some contingent that was able to complain, and that's fine. That's fine. That doesn't mean that some amount of the complaints didn't have a justification for them, but it was just, I think, from outside looking in, kind of a tough year for the product, just as a result of that. No matter what,
I think people set themselves up to be disappointed too, because they had expectations. They had these math formulas in their head, like if MSRP goes up X dollars, there'll be 2x or 3x increase in reprint value and stuff like that.
And of course, for anybody listening into this who maybe isn't familiar with when we talk about some of this stuff on here, but one of the things we, as Brainstorm Brewery, have talked about a lot in the past is the True Name Nemesis problem, where everybody wanted that deck, but they didn't want it to play Commander. So people were buying True Name Nemesis decks to have True Name Nemesis for Legacy, and it wasn't getting the product into the hands of the people it wanted to go into.
Yeah,
and,
then people were buying True Name Nemesis decks in order to crack it open and resell the cards inside.
And that's just good for nobody, right? I mean, whether it probably isn't great for Wizards because you only have one deck selling. It's not good for Commander players. Like, it's probably not even how the Legacy players want to acquire their cards. It was just... The
stores didn't like it either because the one deck was selling and they had to bust a whole case to get another one.
It's a huge problem for stores when you only have one deck that sells because it's like, well, do I reorder all of them to get the one deck? Like, how do I want to do this? And then things, start to get a little wonky.
Well, WotC actually came up with a pretty elegant solution to that, which was give them twice as many of the decks they want in the reorder.
Yeah, it was just a hassle. No one wants that to be the case with Commander, so it is a difficult line to walk. I mean,
and it hasn't really happened since then.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and a big change is when we released the very first Commander decks, the ones with Flusterstorm and Scavenging Ooze. It was really the first time we had done something like this, right? And make a bunch of new cards that were legacy legal in a product. And we had no idea how Commander was going to do. I say we. I wasn't there at the time, but I always like to say we when I like the thing, and them if I don't like the thing.
Of course.
Yeah, we do that.
Right. Like, we made the original Ravnica, but they made Darksteel. Okay, that's just how it works out. But anyway, so when we were making these decks all the way back in the day, we didn't know how Commander was going to do. So to help insulate the unknowingness of how this whole thing was going to go down, we made sure to put some legacy shots in there.
Right.
And that's where things like Flusterstorm and Scavenging Ooze came from. And what we've learned over time is this really isn't the product for them. Like, now we do sets like Conspiracies and Battle Bond, where it makes a lot more sense to put those kind of cards in, as opposed to a Commander deck where it causes some of these aforementioned problems. Right. And generally, frankly, if a card comes into Legacy through a Commander deck, it's not really a fun or satisfying card to have in that format. Now we the one place that we're a little more okay with doing it is like Answers. I'm generally more okay with than Threats, but Threats showing up in these kind of products is especially bad.
Right.
Like, if a card in a Commander deck is a strong enough threat to make waves in Legacy, we've probably done something wrong.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that probably is something that most people recognize based on just how things have gone over the last couple of years. But, it is important for people to hear that and remember that balance. I mean, with that said, we have seen some really good cards, like, say, Wormcoil Engine, that have been in precons. You increase the availability of the card. It's really good for people outside of just Commander. And I guess, a lot of people are looking at it with the MSRP increase and all of this stuff and want more of these cards. But, of course, there's only so many, just powerhouse cards or threats or different things that you can put in each deck. So when you're looking at just what is possible for you to include into each deck, what are some of the ways you substitute, looking at some of the decks in 2018, maybe the Enchantress deck or something, there were probably cards that would have been extremely powerful that you could have included, but weren't included for whatever reason. And sometimes, like you said, it's for people to have an upgrade path. I mean, how do you sort of approach that in each one, when you can just say, hey, I can just crank this deck up to 11, but how do I temper it down but still keep it fun?
Well, another really important part of that too is that we have we call the Biodome, and that's all four of the decks playing against each other.
Yeah.
And a lot of players, like, you'd be shocked how many players, they just buy all four decks from the year and they have it like a board game, right? They put all four of the decks on the shelf. They take them out and they all play them against each other, put them back on the shelf. Maybe they mingle between years, but for the most part, they stick with the same year.
That's kind of fun.
Playing against each other, which is actually a pretty fun way to play, by the way. I would recommend trying it if you haven't. And making sure that it's balanced for those players is really important because that's how a ton of people experience these decks. So when we're working on the product and trying to figure out what cards to put in, that's definitely another huge factor of how strong we want to make a deck. Because if we blow, say, the enchantment deck out to 11, and everyone else is super far lagging behind, it's going to make that experience kind of lame. And, of course, there are things to balance here. We want to make sure we give players the reprints they need and the great new cards, not at the expense of the Biodome experience. We want to make sure we make the Biodome experience not at the expense of giving people great reprints and new cards. So there's somewhere in the middle you kind of have to hit. And we spend a lot of time. I mean, the majority of Commander design is playtesting the decks against each other and then refining the cards based on that. And I think, with 2018, it's possible the pendulum swung a little bit too far in favor of balancing the decks against each other as opposed to giving players reprints that they wanted. And we took note of that, and the pendulum always swings back the other way, right? So well, I think in future Commander releases, I guess, stay tuned.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the interesting things is a lot of people, and you said you subjected yourself to some Reddit threads, but a lot of people just look at the decks and they say, oh, it's so obvious. Why wasn't this card in it? And, I just think it's valuable that you are able, like you said, it's a pendulum that goes both ways, but that there are real reasons, like you saying that a lot of people actually do play the decks that way. There actually are reasons why those decisions were made. It's a lot of times I think people tend to just think that
overreact.
Well, no. I was just going to say that just think that it's a human nature sort of thing. Just think that they know better, right? And how can Wizards or whatever large company you're talking about not have seen this? And I just think there's value to being able to actually, have Gavin be able to come on here and talk about the other side of it and say, well, it's not like they can't realize that this deck would be better with this card, but there are actual reasons for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, as I mentioned earlier, we want to preserve cards for master sets to make them special to get there. Mm-hmm. That's important. Yeah. And other ancillary sets. But, you bring up a good point, and this is something I haven't really talked about a lot, but I really want to say here for everyone listening out there. We're not perfect in R&D. We are definitely not perfect, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, we're also not blind. And we can see most of the same things that y'all are seeing when it comes to card availability and and how to build decks in a strong way. And if our goal for any given commander deck was just to sell you the most powerful version of that deck with all of the best cards you could ever put in that deck, we could definitely build that version. And in fact, sometimes when we bring new designers onto the team, they turn over decks like that. And don't get me wrong, they're incredibly powerful. Like the decks, when the first draft of the enchantment deck was completely absurd. So yes, we absolutely do see things like this. And I really want to try and communicate that it's not that we don't see them, because I know that there's a lot of people out there who think that, oh, isn't it obvious they had just put, I don't know, Sarah Sanctum, which I know is on the reserve list, but if they had just put
lots
Sarah
of reasons,
Sanctum,
Mana Reflection and
privileged position, greater Oromancy,
with Sterling Grove,
like
right?
Idyllic Tutor,
yeah.
Right. For example, Sterling Grove is a great example. Yeah. I'll tell you why that card's not in the product, which is that we don't generally like putting tutors in these commander decks. And the reason why is if you open up the box, you pick a commander, you sit down and play, and on turn 2, you cast a tutor, and you don't know what's in your deck, it's kind of a miserable experience. Like, all right, everyone, hold on. I got to read every card in my deck. Now, like, there are exceptions. For example, land tutors we're okay with. Sure. Very specific tutors we're okay with. But for the precons, generally we don't like putting tutors in there because it just leads to a bad gameplay experience. And we're always trying to... The important thing to us is that if someone sits down and once again there's this new player experience and they're new to Commander and they're playing their first game, we want them to play a second game because that creates more Commander players. And balancing that is really important. So there's a lot of factors to take into account there. We want to make sure that they also don't get steamrolled. But Commander's pretty self-balancing since it's multiplayer. So, stuff like, the no tutor rule is a thing that excludes some cards out of the decks. And there are just various rules like that help us create the best gameplay experience we can.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and throw one at you that we didn't. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. But
please, I'm open.
I mean, let's talk about 2017 and 2018, right? You were the lead designer on both of those. What specific decks or mechanics or themes or however you want to put it were you most happy with? Looking at that product as a thing that, you were responsible for creating.
Yeah, so in 2017, the two that I am definitely the happiest with are dragons and cats for two very different reasons. The dragons deck, I feel, was just like such a perfect slam dunk. Like we had never done a 5-color deck before. Dragons is one of the most beloved things in fantasy, and we got to make a sweet dragon deck. And it just drew a lot of eyeballs. Like you tell people that there's a dragon deck they can buy, and they're just going to go buy it. Like that's the perfect thing. The dragon deck, I think, universally was the one that sold out the quickest in most places. Like vampires sold out pretty fast, but all the anecdotal data we have says that dragons did really well. Cats, I'm proud of for a very different reason, which is this was the first year we were moving to 4 decks, and I had this kind of vision of we would do 3 tribes of players, kind of expected, like things that they knew, and then one that was just like something way out of left field. to really grab that eye. Because the interesting thing about the Cats deck is, if you're a new player, it's very attractive and pretty simple to play. But if you're a franchise player, you've never been able to build a Cats deck before.
Right.
That's something new and different, right? And so we tried. I actually have pictures on my phone of the whiteboards where we talked about what all the different tribes could be, and we looked at rats. We looked at ninjas.
Merfolk.
I don't know why I'm only thinking of Kamigawa things. We looked at snakes. We looked at Bant Merfolk, for a really long
now
time.
We're talking.
We looked at a ton, but we really wanted like an off the beaten path.
Yeah.
And then Mark Gottlieb suggested Cats, and I'll admit, I didn't have a lot of confidence. But he was my boss at the time, and he was a great designer. And I was like, all right, well, try building it, come back, and see if the proof's in the pudding.
Yeah.
And he came back with a first draft with a few new cards, and we played it, and it played well, and it had this equipment sub-theme, and we rolled with it. And so to me, that is like almost the opposite of the Dragons deck, where it was a triumph of like ingenuity and believing in something, in a place where 90% of designers would have just killed something and said no. I was like, no, roll with it, show me what you got, and it ended up being something that was really cool.
Was Hungry Lynx in that first draft?
Hungry Lynx was not in the very first draft, but it was a card that he made pretty early on. Yeah, I love that card.
Yeah, that is like...
To me, that falls in the Bold Weir Intimidator category of cards, where it just has a line of text that anyone can appreciate, even if they don't know Magic. Mark's inspiration for that card is Mark has 2 cats, and he was just like sitting at home one day. I'm totally serious, by the way. He was sitting at home one day, and he was like, Magic has a lot of fierce cats. What about the house cat? I don't like house cats in Magic. And then he made this card as like a cute little house cat.
That's great.
So in 2017, those were my favorites. In 2018, I mean, maybe I'm biased because it was the deck. In Commander design, everyone owns a deck and gets to kind of build that deck and how it goes. And maybe I'm a little biased because it's the one that I worked on the most, but I really like the blue, white, black deck just because it's so different. Playing with the top of the library is really, really cool. And be able to make
the threat of shifting everyone's board around is existential. Like,
also, that card is just terrifying because you can't steal anything. Not just a horrifying commander to play against.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to interrupt. Is the Esper Miracles deck the spike deck of this rotation?
Very much so. Yeah, like if you look at the decks, the other 3 are all tied to card types. Although, yes, lands matter. I get the meme. But the Esper one is doing something that isn't really that, and that is it's different. It's very spiky. It's really what's in a control deck with this cool top of the library thing going on. So, and it's 2 of my favorite cards in the whole product, by the way, which are Yuriko, which I adore. You would be shocked how hard I had to fight to get that card through. A lot of
it's too good. That's why
it is very good.
No, people were like, "No one's gonna like this card," and I'm like, "No, I believe there's an audience for this," and there is.
Yeah,
and no one likes it because anyone who's ever been attacked by a Yuriko player does not like that card.
And then I don't remember what the final name is off the top of my head, but the one that manifests the top card of your library every turn. And you can play your face-down cards, including your instants and sorceries.
I don't remember what that is.
What is the name of that? It's a 5-mana blue enchantment.
Whatever. Somebody knows it.
Is it Manifold Insights, maybe?
No. Its playtest name was Threader. Not that that's useful, but
that's the most useful. Playtest names are my favorite part of hearing about stories from R&D.
Oh yeah. Dude, we have so many great playtest names. My favorite right now, the one that I keep putting into sets, because what happens is you put a playtest name into a set, and then eventually it gets changed, and you're like, all right, it's open season on that playtest name again, time to use it again. And the one I keep putting into sets is Centaur of Attention. I just love that one.
It's going to make into an onset one of these days.
All right, man, same question. Go ahead.
I gotta look up the enchantment name. I just got it. It's Primordial Mists.
Okay, there you go.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say same question. What do you, when you look back, you said you changed anything. I mean, what were the things you were, the least excited about with how things turned out from those 2 sets?
Yeah, well, for the first set, I think even though it does have a pretty good spike win rate, I would go back and make the Wizard deck just a little easier for the average player to win with. Now, granted, my role on the 2 sets, while I was the lead designer on both of them, was a little different. With 2017, I was the lead vision designer, which means that I came up with the tribes and the initial vision for all the decks, and then I handed that off to a different person, Brian Hawley, and he took it the rest of the way. So the final design was on him. With 2018, the roles were reversed, and Ken Nagel actually came up with the vision design, came up with the deck themes and the cards, Then he handed it off to me, and I did the final design.
Yeah.
So the final design of the wizard deck, for example, was not on me. But with that said, if I could go back and change things about it, I think I would have just added like a few more big creatures, just like some random doofy big flyers that were easy to win with, for example, some big over the top cards. Maybe like a Rise of the Dark Realm style thing, right? To just close out the game.
How did the mechanic of, I guess from 2017 specific, because this has been my pet peeve with it, is the same reason people don't like Oloro, is that command zone mechanics are, same reason people don't like Yuriko. Command zone mechanics are just things you can't interact with. So the make copies of your wizards just tilted me to no end when I was playing.
I knew you were going to complain about this.
Of course I was going to complain about this. No, I'm just curious if, you're being pretty, honest about this stuff. What was the reaction to sort of that hook? Did players like it? Am I the minority? Or just what was the response to it, as much as, you guys are willing to share?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'll be completely candid with you. So I also want to kind of give you the background on this before talking about the reaction. So first of all, Wizards, we don't like Oloro. Like, we think Oloro is pretty much a mistake. Yeah. And we knew that when we were working on these cards. And the thing we don't like a lot about Oloro is there's no cost to it whatsoever. You just put it off in your command zone, and you're like, I will never cast this. Don't care getting 2 life every turn. And it also just makes the game take longer, which is super lame, by the way.
And it's never the Oloro player who's tasked with keeping life totals for the table. It's always me, because I'm the only one who's literate.
But with Eminence, we talked about it for a long time, and the reason that we decided it was pretty different from Oloro is that you are paying a significant cost. First of all, you have to build your deck in a certain way. You have to build it in a tribal to make it relevant.
Okay.
And 2, the bonuses that it gives you are all things that you can deal with on the board. For example, extra vampire tokens can be killed off.
Of course, yeah.
Your dragon's costing less, you can just deal with the dragon. Pumping up your cats, whatever, like cats are pretty weak in general, you can kill them off. I agree that I think the one that is the most egregious is Inala, the wizard one.
Yeah, that was the one that always bothered me.
But who is anyone building Inala though? Like relative to the other two, which are a lot of fun. Like Marisol kind of was a linear build, and Cass is sort of like the really spiky one that's even good enough for Legacy. But I didn't see a lot of people building Inala. Like once
I'm just another salty Magic player who lost to it one too many times. I have no good basis for my complaint.
Well, hey, that's fine. It's your podcast,
I see a lot of people doing the infinite turns thing with Inala, which is pretty lame-o.
Yeah.
There's the Wanderwine Prophets, which is this champion of Merfolk guy who when he hits you take an extra turn.
We have to jump through 18 hoops to get that itself. So.
That is just the slap in the face that I die to a Merfolk too.
Hey, you live by the fins, you die by the fins. Man.
Good point.
I mean, I'm just saying. That one was made by development, not me.
Okay. All right. The truth comes out.
I would have caught the Wanderwine Prophets.
I tried. You're kidding. I would have never got the Wanderwine Prophets. I mean, whenever we knew that card was dangerous, actually, Cass was the card I saw and was like that was made in development, and I was like, this card is sweet. Also, can we print this card? Turns out it is sweet and we could print it. But that was the one I was actually most worried about. And Brian Hawley is a really smart guy, and he did a great job developing those decks.
Well, it's so funny that you can stare at something for like 4 months, and then like within the first week a card's spoiled, people like just 5 million people all looking at it. One person's like, Wanderwine Prophets, and you're like, we wouldn't have caught that in 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, there's also, there's, maybe like 5 to 10 people, fewer than 10 people working on this product, right? And there are 20 million Magic players.
Right. Exactly.
So we're a little outnumbered. Now, to be fair, I feel positive that at some point Brian ran a search for all the wizards and saw the interactions. It's possible he missed this interaction. Possibly just decided, whatever, don't care about this.
It's champion of Merfolk. Who does that?
Hey, and maybe he wanted people to do this.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having the ability.
They've had infinite turn stuff that it takes some work. Like it takes work for the Azuri and the dude, the
Sage of Hours.
Sage of Hours. Yeah.
Like that's,
there's nothing wrong with that.
It's interactable. It's easy to disrupt and whatever. So
our general line in Commander is that we're okay with 2 card combos with your commander, but we try and avoid 1 card combos with your commander.
Yeah.
So maybe Wonder One Prophets is over the line. I don't know. But the thing about Commanders, at the end of the day, dude, if someone keeps killing you with that, just don't play with them anymore. Like,
Commander's so good at balancing itself. It's just incredible.
It's like, great, you got your kill. Time for a new deck. No? All right, I'm done. Like, okay.
Yeah, or you just like in your this is my friends group, people have taken apart decks when they're just too good, right? They just, if you get yelled at by your friends enough, you'll just stop. Like, it's not worth it.
Because I think if something's that good, then that's all you want to do, and it makes the deck linear, and that bores me.
Right, that's boring. Yeah, it's like Paradox.
But I mean,
Engine.
I realize I'm 75% guy. I'm not,
Yeah, but I mean, that's
not everybody.
That's why you actually don't run into that many Paradox engines in the wild, at least in my experience, because it's just so lame.
It's like, cool, you went with Lab Maniac again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my design. That was a strong one.
It wasn't a mistake. It's just maybe building with it. And always having that be your only win con is a mistake, I think. I love that Laboratory Maniac exists.
Yeah, agreed.
Any card that says you win the game, I will try to win with. I love it.
Okay, Corbin.
Yes.
Pop quiz.
Hit me.
What are the games the Wizards of the Coast makes?
Oh, God. I'm going to go with...
Currently.
I'm going to go with Magic the Gathering. Am I good so far? All right.
You're 1 for 1 so far.
All right. Dungeons and Dragons.
All right, 2 for 2. You're off to a great start.
Duel Masters.
Yes, Duel Masters.
What about Robo Rally?
That's all I got. I think I've hit my 3, unless we're counting...
So, of course, the other 2 are Transformers, the new TCG we just released.
Okay.
And also Avalon Hill, which is our board game branch. They make Betrayal at the House on Hill.
You know what? I actually knew that.
I played that
game.
Know that. That's interesting.
I played that game, and I noted that it was by Wizards. Okay.
So, Duel Masters, the reason I bring this up, this impromptu pop quiz, is so Duel Masters is a wild one in that it is a game that's released in Japan and played in Japan, and extremely popular in Japan.
Right.
Quite often it's the #1 trading card game in Japan, even over Magic.
It's crazy.
But we make it here in America in the Renton office. So there's like kind of a weird, it's unusual, but it's cool.
Yeah.
And a thing they do that I just adore to no end is they don't have a ban list in Duel Masters. Instead, what they have is the Hall of Fame. And when a card is too good, it gets banned and promoted to the Hall of Fame. And and over there, it's like an honor if your card is banned, you can't play with it anymore. It's like, oh my gosh, like I built this insanely broken deck and it got promoted to the Hall of Fame. That's amazing. I've done this card a great honor. And I wish Magic was like that sometimes. I always joke we should rename our ban list because in Commander, how cool would it be if it's like, you know what, your Wonder One Prophets and all the deck, it's in the Hall of Fame now. Like, it's made it. Congratulations. you never...
Meanwhile, in Magic, if you're banned, you get out of the Hall of Fame.
Right. Oh.
Too soon for a Saito joke? I'm sorry.
He was never in, Jason. Get it right. He was never in the Hall of Fame. He was a Hall of Fame elect. It's a very important distinction that came about because of that. All right, so moving on, we wanted to talk. I know we don't have you all night here. We want to talk a little bit about.
Actually, you do. The limit's on. You guys are on East Coast time. I'm on Pacific time, so I've got the time out for hand.
He's like, I can just wait them out.
Entire goal. I just want to drain you as long as I can. Let's see what we can do.
I think we were going to ask about conspiracy. Did DJ Jason? Do you want to take that one?
Well, specifically, like. You've said that you're aware that Battle Bond was very well received. We love it. As someone who was a fan of Conspiracies 1 and 2, and then saw Battle Bond and realized it was everything I ever wanted, what did you learn from Conspiracy 1 and 2 that contributed to the success of Battle Bond?
Well, yeah, so interestingly, believe it or not, there's only 3 product architects in the whole building. So we're a very specialized role, and it takes a very specialized skill set to be able to do it. And we kind of have divvied up the products in different ways. And what's under my purview is all of what I call like the goofball weirdo sets,
right?
Which are like Commanders and Conspiracies and Battle Bonds and all those things. And I just love it. I'm like, yeah, y'all can go take the mainland sets. You go deal with boring old Ravnica. I mean, not that Ravnica's boring. Ravnica's awesome, obviously. But you go deal with Ravnica, and I'm going to figure out how we make this giant beetle herd happen. That's what I want. That's what I want to do, right? And I love it. I absolutely adore it. And Battle Bond was a blast to work on. So I was on the design team for both of the Conspiracy sets, and for Battle Bond I was the lead designer. So I got to make all the final calls on everything. And we knew that both of the conspiracies were really popular and they did really well, but we didn't just want to do another one. We wanted to do something different. And we were looking at other formats to support that players liked. And what we noticed is this was kind of right after Oath of the Gatewatch,
right,
where Two-Headed Giant had a bit of push and it did really well. And we thought, what if we explored this a little more than just the pre-release? And we started playing it, and it was super fun. And that's when Sean Main, actually, as designer at the time, had an idea for this Two-Headed Giant draft experience. And then he kind of made the initial framework for it and led the initial team and then handed it off to me, and I just ran with it. And it was a blast. You learned so many things. And there are so many challenges to try and address in a Two-Headed Giant draft.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cards, for example, that just you do not make sense to put in a set like this, that are confusing for various reasons or that don't work in intuitive ways. The number of cards that I would be like, man, if only this said target creature instead of target creature you control, that I was looking through when I was doing searches for the set is just tremendous, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of cards where we just bit ourselves because of how we worded it back in the day. And I actually at one point lobbied for having cards, maybe doing like a mass errata to write like friendly and enemy on cards, so that in a Two-Headed Giant game you could we could just fix all those.
That's
old
actually
cards,
kind
right?
of cool because people play team
That's
versions.
daunting.
It is, but people play team variants of Commander and stuff too. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, and it's got its ups and downs.
Yeah,
but ultimately, we decided not to roll with it, of course, and for good reason. But there's a lot of things you can't do, and a lot of things that are confusing too. We found that, for example, if you play a card that says this deals 2 damage to each opponent, a lot of players didn't know if it took 2 or 4 damage.
Yep.
So there's a lot of things we just couldn't do.
God, what was the one in Shadows over Innistrad that just wrecked me all the time in Two-Headed Giant? But there's like a burn guy where it's like every time you play instant and sorcery, just deal 2, deal 2, deal.
You're right.
Yeah, and I played a decent amount of Two-Headed Giant at like this 1 GP.
Gutter Snipe is each opponent.
Yeah.
Who could remember Grey Merchant of Asphodel? That card was the trouncing.
Skullrend.
Urborg Siphon Mage. That's
one.
how long I've been playing Two-Headed Giant.
Skullrend.
Urborg Siphon Mage from Time Spiral.
Each opponent discards 2 cards at random. That's the good one. That's the good one. I play that in Commander. It's so good.
And who could forget Time Spiral Block, where they started running Two-Headed Giant events?
Yeah. Yep.
No, I used they there. And the Storm was in that set. So theoretically, it's really fun. Like your teammate plays a bunch of spells and then you Storm. But
neat.
All these like unplayable Storm cards are just bananas. Like Volcanic Awakening is just unbeatable.
Kyle Bogemus's cousin Steven blew up 9 of my lands because he had a wild pair out.
Right, you're like
it was amazing.
It's unplayable in every other format. And then in Two-Headed Giant, it's just like slam it first pick. Your teammate's like spell. You're like Volcanic Awakening, blow up 4 lands. It's now 2-on-1. Let's play this game. And
it's funny. I actually went to a local Hastings of all places had a Two-Headed Giant modern event. So clearly what one person did was play Storm, and what the other person did was play cards that untapped their land so the Storm player could always kill on turn 2. And it was just absurdly dumb. But anyways, I guess this all speaks to the point that, Two-Headed Giant plays by a different set of rules.
Right, so here's another interesting thing we found. Speaking of that, Two-Headed Giant is unusual in that we wanted people to draft Two-Headed Giant.
Yeah.
But then afterwards, we didn't expect anyone to go play Two-Headed Giant constructed. That's not a thing,
yeah,
right?
Not
like
at all.
As you just described, it's completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of people have kind of called the set Commander Masters, and that's why the set feels that way so much, because we decided, okay, it's going to appeal toward a more casual audience. Well, let's just make the rares and mythics awesome for the most popular casual format, Commander, and then we can have this awesome draft experience. And later, when you're using your cards and going to put them in decks, they're all ready for your Commander decks. And
as opposed to the conspiracies, which are cool, but when you're done drafting them, they're... Yeah.
Who can I thank for
the conspiracies are aimed for like cube, right? There are a number of cubes that play conspiracies, although frankly they're pretty ridiculous.
They're just broken. They're just always broken.
Yeah, there's a very big invisible power level to conspiracies that there's a big difference between like the very, very enfranchised player and the guy who's like getting into cube. He's like 5 less cards in your deck seems okay, but not better than what. And then it's just like you pick that over Soul Ring.
Hey, they're just always broken. But so who can I thank for the cycle of lands from Battle Bond?
Oh my God, those lands!
That is all me.
Oh, so you're a hero.
Right guy. So what happened is Sean passed the set off to me, and I started thinking, and I realized, okay, what do we like to put in our sets that everyone gets excited about? Dual lands.
Right.
What do Commander players need? Dual lands. Also, what do we never make new versions of in Commander products because they're not full-on sets? Dual lands.
Yeah.
And that's where we came up with these bad boys. We did try a number of different versions, like various conditions for entering tapped or untapped. We did talk, I know this is a popular community thing, we did talk about land types on them or not. Ultimately, we decided to not put land types on them. And the reason why we didn't put land types on them is we just didn't feel like they needed them.
Yeah.
Like people were already getting excited about these, and every time you put land types on something, it makes the next time you put land types on something all the less exciting.
Right, exactly.
And the Battle Bond lands were already plenty exciting. There auto includes in all of your commander decks of those colors. They didn't need to have land types too.
I'm just saying, Gavin, it's an incomplete cycle, man.
Yeah, literally the next sentence I was going to say.
Okay.
Yes, don't worry, you'll get the other 5 someday. I promise you'll get the other 5 someday. Like, I made them 5 knowing that you'd get the other 5. And yes.
Yeah, I'm still waiting on talismans and border posts.
Yeah, talk to Dan Bach about his talisman.
Well, you joke.
It'll be Talisman of Patience when it comes out.
We've actually talked a lot about completing cycles recently.
Yeah.
And the talismans are actually high on our list. Like, a lot of commander decks want them. So yeah, I would say stay tuned if you like talismans.
Wow.
I think you'll see them eventually.
All right.
I don't even like border posts. It just makes me itchy that the cycle's not completed.
All right. So
I mean, some cycles are higher on our list than others. Talisman's pretty high. Border post a little less so.
Yeah, border
but I
post,
think
not so
you'll
much.
see them eventually. And it's same with dual lands. Like, yes, there's a few old cycles, like the Kamigawa tap lands. We're not itching to make 5 more of. But there's a lot of half-completed cycles we want to get more out of there in the world. And yeah, I'm sure eventually you'll see the other half, the Amonkhet ones, for example.
Right.
And who knows what else.
Cycle Masters.
Cycle Masters.
Astral Slide based draft set, but the rest of it's just cycles.
You just made Rashad Miller happy. His Astral Slide deck is the most terrifying commander deck to ever play.
At Wizards, there was a time I was working on this. Have you guys ever played a legacy game? Like a game where you change how the game is played over time? Are you familiar with this genre?
Yeah, like Risk 2041 or whatever.
I actually have one, but haven't played it yet. So yeah, I'm with you.
So the premise of a legacy game, for all the listeners out there, is it's a board game, but instead of being the same game every time you play like a 12 or 15 game campaign. And every time you will literally change the board forever. For example, in Risk Legacy, you will actually rip up cards from the deck, or cities will get blown up with nukes, and that city will just be not be on the map anymore. Like, you will unlock new races. Like, things will just change radically over the course of the game, and a story kind of unfolds. And a long time ago, and it didn't work out for a number of reasons, but I tried designing a Magic Legacy, which was basically like a format you would play, and then you put stickers on your cards. And I tried the model of a cube that was like a cube legacy. And one of my favorite stickers was the cycling sticker, because you just you'd get some stickers you could put on your cards during the draft, and then you just have your cards cycle. And I remember I made a Genesis with cycling, which was really, really strong.
Yeah.
That one was one of my favorites.
Nice.
Yeah. You just cycle away your Genesis. Although it got the power level was way wrong, because my 2 favorite ones were Hymn to Turok with Rebound, which was not a reasonable Magic card. The runner-up, by the way, was Muldrifter with Persist. That one was really good.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, my gosh.
But
how did Blake Rasmussen not print this card?
Value.
My personal favorite, and the one that's just I don't know why the sticker was in here. Clearly it was never going to be used for anything good. Was we gave someone... I can't even say it with a straight face. Someone gave Kozilek from Rise of the Eldrazi Miracle 2. It's a miracle! It's Kozilek! You're dead! Here we go! Oh, that was good time. Good time. That's a project that I'm sure that never will happen. I tried it 5 years ago.
That's pretty cool.
And that's
a cool idea, though.
Broken for...
Speaking of stuff that we think...
Yeah, go ahead, Jason. Go ahead.
Speaking of stuff we think might never happen, can we talk about Commander's Arsenal?
Yeah, let's talk about Commander's Arsenal.
Do you feel like you have other products that are kind of in that slot? Because I felt like Commander's Arsenal was filling the gap between, are we going to do Commander again or aren't we? And then sort of like Commander's a yearly thing, so maybe we don't need Commander's Arsenal. Is that something you feel like there's demand for and could be something you did?
Yeah, so the Commander's Arsenal, to go back a step, you're actually absolutely right. So what happened is we released the first Commander decks, and then a lot of people don't even remember this, but there was a gap year, right? There wasn't anything in the year between the two. And basically we didn't know how Commander was going to do, so we didn't want to make another one. But we saw, holy smokes, this is super, super successful. We should get something out. And so we made Commander's Arsenal very quickly to kind of fill that stopgap year. But we didn't have the time, really, to design any new cards, and we didn't want to take any risk on that. So we put it out in the year between. So that's why there's only one Commander's Arsenal. But with that said, as Commander is growing more and more and becoming one of our most popular formats, if not maybe the most popular format, depending on... the problem with Commander, by the way, is we don't have perfect data on it. Like a lot of formats, Standard, Modern, we have pretty good analytics on because those are played in tournaments. But Commander, the majority is just played on kitchen tables around the world. Mm-hmm. So... I mean, who knows how many Commander players there really are, but it's certainly one of the most popular formats, if not the most popular format.
Oh, the data is self-reported. A lot of the stuff that we have is like about player numbers and stuff, and there's always some weirdo in Greece who submits his Brago deck 1,500 times and messes up all your numbers and stuff like that. So, yeah, the when you have self-reported data, it's always really suspect.
A Brago player would do that, wouldn't they? Anyway, there's something appropriate about flickering in and out and keep repeating. It's like they got lagged.
No, this is a different Brago deck. It's different every time. That's my Greek accent. That was
great Greek accent. Go ahead, Gavin.
So, with Commander's Arsenal, I think now that the format is so popular and people want to buy more Commander things, like these decks every year aren't enough. Clearly, there's a ton of appetite for it, right? We released Battle Bond and Commander 2018 right next to each other, two sets that are really aimed at Commander players, and they both sold really, really well. Yeah. So there's clearly this appetite, and also a lot of Commander players tend to have, frankly, a lot of disposable income. So making a high MSRP product for these Commander players makes a lot of sense. So I think there absolutely is something in that space, and we're investigating. There are a lot of different options we could try selling it in, but I would say if you want the kind of collector's version, cool Commander's Arsenal style thing, you could absolutely see us making something like that in the next.
Yeah, I mean they were perfect. We've talked about this before on this podcast that it was a perfect Christmas gift for someone you really care about. But the Commander decks were always perfect Christmas gifts as well. And now they're moved so they're not in the winter anymore. So we don't have the Commander player who wants a Christmas gift. We don't have anything for him right now.
Right, like I mean, Unstable was like sort of for that player, but yeah, I know what you mean. Like it's not like hey mom, just buy me this and I'll be happy.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
My in-laws don't know anything about me other than that I will put Commander decks on my Amazon wish list.
Yeah, it was
1 year for my birthday, about 2 years after I started playing Magic. So I wasn't like great or anything, but I had a pretty good.
How old were you for the record?
For the time, I was 13. Okay, 13 years old. And because I started playing when I was 10, but by this point I was 13 because that's how birthdays work. Anyway, so my aunt caught wind that I was playing Magic, and they liked this Magic game. So she walked into a store and asked them, "Hey, I need to get my nephew something that's Magic related." And he's like, "Oh, don't worry, I got just the thing. He'll love it." And so, I opened up my card. I opened up my card. From her, and it's like, I got you this thing. I know you like Magic. You're gonna really love it. I'm really excited. Then I open up like this very immaculately wrapped box, and I unveil it, and it's a box. Not a box of Magic, like a gift box. And I open the gift box, and inside on this like white fluffy like paper is a single pack of Fallen Empire.
Oh, I thought you see.
And what had happened is she had gone into a game store and they had been like, yes, I know a sucker when I see one. And we're like, yes, I will sell her a single Fallen Empires pack and tell her it's the bee's knees to give to her nephew.
Only because she wouldn't buy a box.
On the flip side, that day I had found out what Deep Spawn was. So there we go.
Yeah, the first year that my current wife and I.
What do you mean your current
wife?
Like,
Is there a previous one?
No. But like, she was my girlfriend. That is the
You're
point.
now.
he means his
wife.
future wife.
Yeah, my now wife. The first year that we were dating, she knew that I played Magic, and at this point, I was a very competitive player, like F&M's, local big tournaments, like
F&M
try to get to a
grinder,
GP when I could find a ride, that kind of thing. And she got me like one of the brand new player intro deck things off the shelf, like the Zendikar Allies deck, because it had an elf on it, and she knew I played like extended elves. And
that was nice.
Well, it was nice, but we had a conversation after that about the correct type of gift.
Yeah.
Wise. She's like, it had Turn Timber Ranger on it. I know you like elves. It was a valiant effort, but we had a conversation after that.
You got a booster pack inside.
Yeah, exactly.
And it wasn't Fallen Empires, so
no, it was not Fallen Empires.
I mean, on the flip side, like I appreciate the effort so much. Or it's like, you know what? Magic is hard to figure out what to buy for someone, especially like these are in the days like pre-Reddit, where it's you can't just go on there and ask like, what should I get my boyfriend for Christmas? Like it's a little harder now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I appreciate the effort my aunt put in when I was 13. It doesn't mean any less. I just always find that
it's a great
funny.
story for sure. All right, man. So changing the subject a little bit here, just away from
what, deep spawn not good enough for you?
I do love a good deep spawn, but usually when I'm playing like Eldritch Horror or something, some sort of game like that.
It's no Aelopile or all the other
magic not where
rares.
I need my deep spawns exactly.
Dude, High Tide.
I can't. I mean, High Tide's that's fair game. I mean, but just shifting to something that isn't exactly in your purview, but speaking to the Masters products, as you've referenced them a lot, because it is obviously something you have to consider, even in Commander and Battle Bond, stuff like that, because you've got so many products and you want to divvy up the cards, essentially. Do you feel like they've done a good job now that we've moved to the sort of the much more often, not necessarily all modern masters or even eternal masters, right, model of master sets? So they've done a good job increasing the card availability to people and sort of, I guess, accomplishing what they set out to accomplish.
So, working at Wizards is so fascinating because as a player, you live like linearly, right? Like a set comes out, and then a set comes out, and then a set comes out, and then a set comes out, and it all happens in linear time. Working at Wizards is like being inside an episode of Doctor Who. Like you're jumping around timelines, and like today, like we're on a project from 2021, and then the next day we're on a project from 2020. And what you have to do is you have to keep like all these things in your head, and you kind of have like this grand timeline of like the next 5 years of Magic, and you have to find the best place to put something, right? So you're like, okay, we have this card we want to reprint once or twice. Where are going to be tactically the best places to put it,
right?
Well,
and you guys work a year ahead, right, on pretty much everything?
Well, the minimum, like a year ahead is when we send the cards off to the printers and they're done. Yeah. So at bare minimum a year ahead, but realistically, like right now, the stuff I'm working on is mostly for like 2021, and we've got plans way further
that's a
out
crazy,
than
that's just so hard to even think about that. Any conversation we have about this set or this set, it's just wild to think about not just how far back it is for you, but how far you have to think in advance, especially when you have really narrow windows of things you want to hit in terms of availability and stuff like that.
Right. And then the weird part, and the thing that makes it feel like a time traveler the most, is we have all these great grandiose plans, and we've slotted everything in.
Right.
We've got our timeline perfectly. But then, like, something actually happens in the real world, like a tournament happens, and it's like, uh-oh. Like we got to go change something, or like player feedback of like, oh, they really don't like this product, or they really do like this product. We got to tweak this thing, right? And so we're like altering our timeline all the time based on. So anyway, there's a lot going on. Or sometimes, like normally we have this like very nice plotted timeline, and then every now and then something will happen. It's like, guys, we got to make a project. We got to make it right now. And it's like, all right, let's do this. Let's slam this in. Or a great example is like the Challenger decks, where we knew we wanted to do them, but we couldn't figure out what was going to be in those decks until a few months before they released. Anyway, I'll digress. So I feel like if we move the master sets away to from being all about modern to being themed master sets, so you had iconic masters and masters 25. I think there's a lot of things those sets did well. I think the draft formats were good. I actually really enjoyed. I know 25 was hit or miss for some people. I'd say it was a little more hit than a miss. I really enjoyed that draft format. It was very different. It was less very different than the previous ones. But regardless, I do feel like was a lot to be learned as we switched over from modern masters to this new method of the theme masters, and that we can take those learnings once again going forward. And we didn't have time to really learn from iconic masters that impact Masters 25, but as we work on any future master sets we're working on, we can take the learnings from these master sets and apply them to those sets.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
No, so I'm just going to say, like, I mean, I feel like, iconic and 25 were good. There's definitely room to make them even better. And the next time we do a master set, I would expect for it to take a lot of those lessons into consideration.
That's good to hear. I mean, I think what a lot of people at home are probably saying is, we don't care what the draft format's like because we want reprints, and more importantly, it's like $40 or $30 at a minimum to draft these. I'm going to do it once in my life. Why does it matter that you stuff them with draft cards? I mean, so how would you respond to that sort of just thinking? I mean, how important is it for you guys to serve a draft community with these sets?
Well, let me ask you a question. Why don't we put 15 rares into every Guilds of Ravnica pack?
Because that makes nothing special. If everything's special, nothing's special. And obviously drafting it's no fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Like, one is the draft format, certainly. And yeah, look, I totally understand. It's not just about drafting. It's important that these have the reprints you need, 100%. And especially, by the way, at the rare mythic level, I'm in alignment with that, right? We just putting in random rares that people don't really want to own for the purposes of draft is something that I think we might have done a little bit too much of, and we can learn from going forward. But I do think it's really fun to have these limited draft formats. Like, yeah, people might rally against the draft format of Iconic and 25 because they felt like they couldn't get the cards they wanted out of those sets. But if you ask a lot of players, they'll tell you that Modern Masters 1 and 2 were some of their favorite draft formats of all time. Right? So clearly the draft format is relevant because Modern Masters 1 is a pretty beloved draft format.
It was great.
So, I think it's a careful balance there, make sure those draft formats are good. So the commons and uncommons, I think, do need to exist to make the draft format there. And then the rares and mythics should be allowed to be the big, exciting cards to open. Mm-hmm. And with Iconic and 25, there was probably just a little bit too much of things that players didn't really get excited about. And going forward, I think that we could do to really focus on that rare and mythic rare slot, make sure there's things players want to own, and then you can make a really great common and uncommon limited experience with all kinds of cool old cards. Because for me, part of a master set is, yeah, you get to open up all these really awesome reprints that you need for your decks, but you also kind of get a walk down nostalgia, right? You get to open a pack and see these like commons from Champions of Kamigawa you haven't played with in years, and it's kind of fun to play with.
Yeah, and you get to see them in a whole new context.
Right. Now, when you're, I totally get it. When you're paying $7 for a pack or whatever, you want to be able to feel like you get exciting cards out of it, right? You want to make sure they get things that you're excited about. But hey, we'll learn from Iconic and 25, and I think we'll do better going forward. And that's really a theme for us right now, is we're trying a lot of things out. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of products coming down the pipeline that we're just trying to put out there and see what people think and learn and get them right. And what I ask from the community is, look, we're not going to get them right the first time, almost assuredly. With anything we do, we're probably not going to get them right the first time. But give us the opportunity to take it one or two times to learn from them, so we can give you the best thing you possibly can. And once again, it might seem totally obvious, like what the right thing is to do, but there's so many different factors, and sometimes it's not always one thing.
Well, yeah, so, and like you said, working so far in advance, sometimes something that's exciting at one point isn't exciting later. Perfect case being Splinter Twin. To use a real world example, right? So that is. I imagine something that's also just extremely difficult to plan for.
Yeah, locking down a master set a year before it has to get released is definitely tricky.
Oh, and if it's so obvious, why do you ask 25 different people and get 25 different answers of the obvious one way to fix it?
Right, of course.
But specifically with planning ahead and just trying new things and figuring out new ways to do things that aren't master sets, one of the more interesting ways you've done this recently is the guild kits. They are new. They're brand new. Never been done before. They sort of fill the niche of like the Explorers of Ixalan board game, or just something you can buy 4 of and play at the table like the Commander decks. But they're 60 card.
Amazing call out. You did not. Most people don't draw that connection, but the Arch-Enemy Nicol Bolas and Explorers of Ixalan were the annexes for those sets.
Yeah, I read that a little bit on Reddit a while ago. So it's not my ingenuity to figure that out. But so how likely are you to continue doing like that sort of product, like the guild kits, the Arch-Enemy Nicol Bolas, something that is tied to the theme of the set? And also finds a way to do great reprints, like Privileged Position, Privileged Position's one, Shattering Spree's another one that was desperately needed from over a decade ago.
Master of Waves, buddy, come on.
Master of Waves got a dual deck reprint already.
Well, you can never have enough. The Ixalan board game was amazing. It increased availability to the extent that I'm like, someone's buying these. So, like, there were such good reprints in that Ixalan board game.
Well, it's also crazy. Sorry, I mean, we obviously want to hear Gavin's take for Wizards, but I just think it's crazy how much of your job at Wizards and everyone's job at Wizards is not just. It's like it's not even designing a new game. It's just checking all these boxes of we've done so much great work. Sometimes we just got to balance that. Giving players some of that again with giving them something new.
So, there's a lot there to unpack. So, first of all, yes, the guild kits I think are going to do really well for us. I mean, they're not out yet as of this recording, but initial pre-orders and everything going on with them seems to be doing really, really well. And I think we hit a model that really touched a nerve with players. Now, granted, they are Ravnica, and so they're just going to do well because people like aligning with their guild and buying their guild thing. But there's a lot of really cool stuff in them, too. You get more than just the decks, and the decks are an awesome value, certainly. So I think those are fantastic. Yes, you'll see more stuff like that. Our new philosophy on the Annex line is we should do it where it makes sense, but not do it if it doesn't make sense. So you'll see within more things like this. One thing that we've noticed is that, and it took us a really long time, like it's amazing how we can be 25 years old this year and still be learning things. But as more new players are coming into the game, and as we're studying and learning, what we found is actually one of the most daunting things about Magic, one of the things that scares a lot of people away, is building a deck. And for anyone in this podcast, we've built hundreds of decks, and we know how to do that no problem. We have all this information in our head about mana ratios and creature counts and what's a good card and what's a bad card. But if you've never played a card game before, and you come into Magic, and yeah, you grab your sample deck, you play, no problem, but then you're asked to build a deck, where do you even start? Like, there's so much you have to learn. It's very daunting. And that's, by the way, part of what I think has made Commander so successful, is that you can just buy a deck off the shelf and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
And these guild kits are great because they're just precon decks. Like, yeah, they're just casual precon decks. They're not really for any specific format. But you can just buy them and play with them, and they're a lot of fun. And I think there's a very, very wide group of people that would love to have access to more things like this. And the fact that they have such great reprints is a marvelous cherry on top. So, yeah, I think you can expect to see more like this in the months and years to come.
Excellent. What we talking about design. This is sort of a specific question you may or may not be able to address, but it seems like there's animus from a design perspective towards the searching and shuffling type of effects. It seems like they're being replaced by stuff like Elvish Rejuvenator, where you sort of order a portion of your deck, but don't go searching through everything, and you could potentially whiff on it, which could feel bad, but it is less disruptive to the game than picking up your whole deck and searching for it. What sort of challenges does that create if that seems to be the design paradigm going forward? If you're trying to design like a mana base for a set or something like that.
Do you guys watch a lot of television?
Jason does.
No.
I guess I do. Sure.
You're like, where's Gavin going with this? So a thing that I think is really interesting, and I kind of liken this to, is you'll have a TV show, and like there'll be the showrunner that makes up the plot for the whole season and runs the show and like has the vision for the show. But the showrunner writes some of the episodes, like a few of the really important ones, but they don't write all the episodes. And every few episodes has a different writer in a lot of cases. Okay. Mm-hmm. And with Magic sets, there's a lot of different lead designers, and every lead designer is designing a set and trying to make a great Magic set, just like every other lead designer. And there's a lot of things that they need to do, like, oh, white needs this many creatures, blue needs this many flyers, like things that we just have to make sure are there to make sure that the format's good. But every lead also adds their own little flair. They have formats they care about that other players don't care about. They have specific, bugbears that they really feel strongly about. And for example, Dave Humphreys, who led Dominaria, really hates shuffling. If you look at his list of sets, there's very few shuffling cards in his sets. So he led, Gate Crash, Avacyn Restored, Dominaria. What was the one right before Dominaria? Amonkhet. There's just very few shuffling cards in those sets. Like there's a couple here and there, but not that many. Because he's really against it. So some of that is just designer preference. But especially with the core set, one thing that we did find legitimately is, once again, this is a silly thing, but shuffling is really intimidating to a lot of brand new Magic players. Like if you don't shuffle cards, if you don't play other traditional card games and you're asked to shuffle a deck, it's like a lot of players just don't know how to do it. Like they don't know how to put cards together well. And okay, they'll get their deck well enough so that they can play the game, but then shuffling the middle of the game just sucks. We always call it like a loading screen in a video game,
right?
Where it's like, all right, rampant growth, time for my loading screen. Not to mention a lot of players when you're new haven't figured out that you just like play rampant growth, say go, and get your land while they take their turn, right? So yeah, in general, so those two are from like a player lifestyle being better kind of thing. The third thing is that tutoring for lands, any land, just can be stronger than we want sometimes. Like it's color fixing. If it gets you a non-basic land, of course, it can do all kinds of ridiculous things with, say, Tron lands. And something like Elvish Rejuvenator, or a card like that, which could get any land instead of just basic lands, means that it's not just about tutoring out your best Tron pieces, but that you can still get all the cool non-basic lands that are in your decks. So there's functional reasons for that as well. Make sure you don't always hit the thing, so there's a little bit of inconsistency. So there's a little reasons of both. With that said, don't worry. You'll still see plenty of shuffling. It's not going away. But I think it has slowly gone down over the years as more and more leads have started to prescribe to Dave's style.
Well, it seems like if Mark Rosewater had his druthers, if there were something sort of around like what people they're talking about Frontier, I think he said he would have preferred something like that with no fetches. So it seems like I don't know if that animus is just towards fetchland specifically or what, but
what is interesting?
I was just wondering if that made your life harder.
Yeah, you guys like talking about fetchlands on this podcast right here. So in general, we're really not huge fans of fetchlands. Like they're insanely strong, and that's great. But one, they kind of make these homogenized mana bases.
Yeah.
Like maybe modern, like what would modern look like without fetchlands? I mean, I'm not going to say it's a worse or a better format, but I can tell you that the decks would probably be more distinct from one another, which is nice. The other thing is that just all the shuffling is just brutal for time it takes to play a game.
Yeah.
Like we've actually looked at timed data from events, all recorded events in formats with fetch lands, like standard formats with fetch lands and standard formats without fetch lands. And the formats without fetch lands just finish many minutes on average faster because you just don't have all that searching and shuffling. Then to top it off, the fetch lands don't look very attractive to new players. Like dual lands are always really hard to get new players to get excited about. But man, a land that doesn't even tap for mana, that you have to pay a life to use, that searches your deck for one of two lands, just doesn't get a lot of people excited. So with that said, on the flip side, we know that players love fetch lands, and they know that they're powerful. So will we see fetch lands again? Absolutely. I'm sure we'll reprint them again eventually.
So is this a situation where I think a lot of people have assumed that shuffling is just not a thing that Wizards wants to do as a whole, and you're saying it's partially individual designers. I mean, is it possible that we'll see fetchlands in Standard again?
I would say it is possible, but it's not something we're excited about. Mm-hmm. Like everyone has their shuffle gradation, right? Like Dave Humphreys is like super like, I don't want any shuffling. I want to get as little shuffling in my set as possible. And some designers are more like, yeah, whatever, there's some shuffling, but if there's egregious amounts of shuffling, we'll try and get rid of it.
Yeah.
And I think fetchlands falls into like the more higher category of egregious amounts of shuffling. Yeah. I'm not going to say that they'll never come back in a standard set. Like there could absolutely be the right environment for them. Like if we did Zendikar again and you want to promote Landfall, that's a place where they would make a lot of sense, for example. But in general, I don't really enjoy the kind of standard environments they create. No.
Yeah. Okay.
I think one interesting tidbit about fetch lands that other people don't talk about is, as somebody whose job it is to condition Magic cards, is that decks with fetch lands tend to get more wear and tear on them, even if you do use sleeves.
I suppose that's true too.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So, like, I've bought decks from people who I know are either like very aggressive shufflers or they just play decks with a lot of fetches. Like, I've bought. And in my experience, just as a GP buyer, buying a lot of Magic cards and just, it's my job, like burn decks and Death Shadow decks traditionally have more shuffle creases just based on how people manipulate the cardboard.
I guess that makes sense. All right, Gavin, we've gone a long time here without bringing up the format that I think people have probably seen you talk the most about recently. Brawl is, it came onto the scene. Everyone was kind of excited for a minute, and now it doesn't really seem to have much going for it at the moment. I mean, as somebody who was or is, I don't know, big into the format, where does Wizards see Brawl right now, and where does it fit into the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. So
I thought you might want to talk about this.
I wrote all these questions, by the way. Corbin handed you the big salad, but I paid for the big salad.
Nah.
Is this like an Olive Garden style situation? Like, what's going on?
Somebody called PB.
So we launched Brawl with Dominaria, and it kind of took off like wildfire, a lot more than we were anticipating. Like, we thought we'd give it kind of a soft launch with Dominaria, see how it did, put it up on Magic Online, whatever, and suddenly everyone was playing this format. It was like there's tons of people talking about it online, tons of people playing on Magic Online queues, and for the first few weeks, everything was awesome. And then, like, the Brawl thing started happening, which was not great.
Yeah, it was pretty rough.
Which was unfortunate. And the problem was we didn't have anything ready to go to support it, as far as like in-store support really went, because we were kind of launching it as like a soft launch to see what players thought. And instead of like slowly ramping up, which is what we thought might happen,
right,
there was this huge surge of activity. And so I think the biggest challenge for Brawl has been giving it that support. And really, also the other thing is we launched it with one-on-one queues on Magic Online.
Yeah, it seemed
really the most fun way to play it is multiplayer, right? Like, we did it because it was an option to get people talking about it, but multiplayer is where the fun.
It's just a wildly different crowd that enjoys 1v1 versus multiplayer.
So with that said, while I'm very sad we had to take Brawl off Magic Online, first of all, what I want to say is a lot of people think that we wrote some articles saying Brawl's dead or whatever, which is just very not true. Like, we took it off Magic Online. Brawl is not dead in the least. There's actually, we just asked a bunch of stores about this, and there's many stores that still run Brawl events and are doing fine with them. But interestingly, this is kind of ridiculous, but it makes sense. The stores that run Brawl events have good Brawl communities, and the stores that don't have good Brawl communities, which I guess makes sense. But there's lots of pockets around the country and world, frankly, where Brawl is being played, which is awesome. And it is pocketed, don't get me wrong, but it's seeing a fair amount of play. With that said, I mean, it's definitely been on a downturn ever since it was initially had that big explosion. And it's because there hasn't been anything out there to support it.
But there has been a rotation.
Yep, there's been a rotation.
I think that's also just like a natural progression of how things that are new work. It's like week 2 of Pokemon Go, literally everybody in the country is playing Pokemon Go. 2 months later, significant downturn, but it's still a game that exists and is popular.
I still play Pokemon Go, for the record.
Well, and then similarly, right, they release more features over time to make their game better and better. And so with Brawl, it just takes us time to make stuff. We talked about the year-long window earlier, and we launched it with Dominaria, so it's taken time to get stuff rolling. But I'm really happy to say that pretty soon, actually, we've got some cool stuff for Brawl in the works. And this is a great time for it, too, because the Ravnica season is like there's all these guilds, all these cool decks to build. So that's very much true. In fact, this hasn't really made the mainstream news because, for better or worse, mostly worse, in North America, we're very North America-centric, right?
True.
But in Latin America, where Brawl has actually seen a pretty heavy hold, are running a promotion right now in Latin America where if you run 3 Brawl events during your season, we'll send you extra F&M promos to use as your Brawl stuff. And we've seen the number of Brawl events triple in Latin America since we started this promotion. So that's just something that we're trying out because we could easily do it for Guilds of Ravnica. And then starting with, I guess I'll say is stay tuned with Ravnica Elite.
That was close.
We've got some cool stuff coming out over the next year. So, yes, a lot of people think Brawl is dead. I want to be very clear. It is not dead. We're doing stuff to support it. And I know you're like, oh, that Gavin, talking about Brawl again. But it really is true. Like, we have stuff going behind it. It just takes time. And trust me, if I could snap my fingers and get everything rolling right now, I would. Another big one, by the way, that probably the number one request I get for Brawl is when will Brawl be on Arena?
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys.
Seems good for
I've
Arena.
Been playing a ton of Arena recently. Absolutely love it. Like been playing an unhealthy amount of Arena probably.
It's great.
Which is weird for me to say, but I'll get home from work and then jam like 5 hours of Arena, which is very strange. I've spent money on Arena, which I never thought I would do, just because I'm like, oh, I work for Wizards. Like, I'm not gonna just pay my own company money. But like, no, I definitely have. Like, I want to get all those cards. It's been so much fun. Anyway, right now they're really focused on make sure that the game is polished and ready to go. Right? They just launched. They've got a lot of stuff they're trying to get ready. But with that said, like the Singleton is kind of the precursor to Brawl, and Singleton's done extremely well. And Brawl is something that we very much have on our radars. We kind of have a rough timeline for getting in there, and we really want to. So stay tuned. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but we very much want for Brawl to show up on Arena.
Cool. Getting down to the last couple questions here. You might have some fun with this one. I mean, you got your start at Wizards partially because of overextended, which is a word that most people listening to this won't understand. But as the architect of Modern to an extent, would you be interested in being involved in the creation of the bridge format between Standard and Modern as the oldest cards in Modern age? Because Modern starts at 2003, and as we get further and further away from that, it starts to look a little bit more like Legacy. I mean, we have people playing Modern who didn't exist when Arcbound Ravager was created. I mean, would you begin to think about something that would be sort of a branch like Frontier, like these formats that are grassroots, and could aggressive reprinting just sort of address that better than a new format? So what would be your take on that?
Yeah, the Frontier is the world, right? I think like in time, eventually we are going to need something in that gap, right? It's only a matter of time until we have the same situation we used to have. Now, whether that time is now or in 2 years or in 5 years or 10 years, I mean, there's a lot of discussions, different feelings on that. But when it's time, I would absolutely love to be involved in that process. Frontier is the format I actually followed a reasonable amount because, one, I visited Japan and played some games and really enjoyed it. And two, I just enjoy seeing the deck list. Like anytime there's a new format, I enjoy brewing for it. I've been playing a lot of Pauper recently just because it's fun to kind of brew for this format that hasn't really been fully explored. And I think there's absolutely something there. Once again, I don't know that now is necessarily the right time to pull that trigger.
Right.
But yeah, when it's time, I would absolutely love to be. And I think it's important too to find that differentiating factor. And maybe fetch lands are it, right? Maybe you do this right after Cons, and the difference between this and Modern is there's the no fetch land, dual land mana bases.
Right.
Or maybe we pick a different starting point, right?
I'd have...
You could even argue that maybe it's supposed to be in a world where there's no Ravnica land mana bases. I don't know. Right?
Well, I think we'd be remiss not to mention that Arena exists now and does not have cards, and there has been stated plans for you to use your cards after rotation hits in Arena a year from now. So I like you said, obviously Wizards can do whatever they want. Maybe that's not the thing, but that is something that I think we would just be remiss not to mention because people at home are certainly thinking that.
Right. I mean, is this supposed to be Ixalan forward or something? Like, who knows, right? And there's a lot of room to investigate and work on that, and a lot of decisions to be made. But when it's time, I want to be there. I love creating formats. It's totally in my wheelhouse.
For those who don't know, I am going to give the quick shout out here. When I was first getting into Magic, and I was, very similar to all of us on this podcast, I was brewing with everything and all this stuff. I would get onto I'm going to say a program that was not Magic Online in which I could play Magic. And I was playing Overextended with people. It's the format Gavin created when people were trying to even back then, answer what do we do about the reserve lists and Legacy, and the answer was make a new format. And I was playing Overextended at the very beginning. I loved it. And then I've been a fan of Modern ever since. That was sort of the progression of that. So obviously, you weren't the only person working on it, Gavin, but I have to say, even all these years later, man, that left a mark, and people loved everything you did put into that. And it's really cool seeing how it's evolved into Modern, which is now an incredibly popular format, etc. So we can't get off of this without giving you that shout out.
It's a pretty wild to look back on, right? Just the idea of creating a format like basically Modern that people played around the world before you worked at Wizards, and then for some reason financing the whole thing yourself it's just like crazy to think about in retrospect. And yet I did it, and now I have this job, so I guess it worked out. But man, that is kind of a ridiculous thing, isn't it?
You set the bar pretty high for the next prospective Wizards employee.
I get asked a lot, hey, I want to work at Wizards. How do I get a job at Wizards? And what did you do? And I'm like, well, I can tell you what I did, but it's probably not going to be the same answer that you're going to use. Like I'm like, okay, here's what I did because it's a fun story. Right. Here's what you should do. Right. And those are two different things.
You should totally
play on the Pro Tour and then design a format. That's it.
You should absolutely plug your What's Your Endgame article right now, because that's probably one of my favorite pieces of Magic writing ever. Yes. Just like that article is actually a profound...
Our editor's going to put that article in the show notes or he's fired. So if that's something you're not familiar with, you can...
But yeah, I mean, like that article came out on Star City Games when I was in high school. Like that article came out when I was in high school. And I sort of read it almost 2 or 3 times a year just to keep myself up to date on like my own goals and my own path in life. And like, it's just a really, really good piece of writing. So thanks.
I feel like the best Magic articles are secretly articles about how to make your life better.
They're definitely not about Magic.
Yes.
Anyone can write a pop song, which is like, here's the deck of the week. Wow, check how hip this is.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the best Magic articles, I feel like have influenced my life. Like even they don't have to even be about life. Like, who's the beatdown? Yep. Super classic.
Who's the beatdown helped me raise my daughter so much better. I'm like, oh, I'm her dad. I'm the beatdown, and then
and then she beats you down.
Yeah.
Wait, this metaphor is getting dark fast. I mean, I think about who's the beatdown in all kinds of things. Like in conversation, there's always a beatdown, right? It's like, okay, someone's talking at you a lot. You should be responsive to them. They're not talking much. You should talk to them, and then they'll respond to you, right? There's like all these things that have just taught me about life via Magic, for better or worse, I guess. And yeah, so I like that article quite a bit. It's the last article I wrote before going to work at Wizards. It still doesn't have its commas, which bugs me. There's this point in time where Star City Games, like all the old articles lost their commas. And so whenever I link someone to my old piece of my writing, I'm just like, look, here's my article, but just know there's no commas in it. And they're like, what do you mean? And then 10 minutes later, they're like, oh, I know what you mean now.
So you were in my neck of the woods recently. You stopped at a bunch of LGSs in Michigan.
That was awesome.
Talk about why you just randomly did that trip. I was just on Twitter. I was like, you're in Detroit? What?
So, yeah, there's this really amazing program inside Wizards. So, of course, a lot of people think of Wizards. What they think of is Magic R&D, right? But there's a lot of different groups in Wizards that are all doing really amazing things, and you don't hear about them quite as much. And one of them is what's called the Retail Development Team. And what they do is they travel around the country to different stores, and they have store visits in different locations. And they just visit a ton of stores in the area and see what Magic is like there. Like, talk to them about what's selling, what's not selling. Because, look, frankly, we can get all the data we want. We can sit in Renton and read the reports. But actually going into stores and seeing players and seeing the stores and talking about what's working and what's not working for them is incredibly valuable. And not everyone likes going on these trips. I love going on these trips. And so every now and then they'll just hit me up and say, hey, we've got a spot open on this upcoming store visit trip. Do you want to come? And I almost always say yes, because first of all, I just love to travel. Like, I travel an absurd amount. A lot of it for work, some of it for fun. One of my life goals is to go to every country in the world. So I just travel whenever I have the time, and I love going around the States. Like, I love Seattle, but LA and New York are like two of my favorite places, so I travel there all the time. Anyway,
no, he didn't say Oklahoma, Corbin.
I know. Come to my store, Gavin. We're great, I promise.
Well, I might have some store visits there next year. I don't know. But so I've been to Detroit on the most recent round of visits, and I've done Dallas and Toronto, just to name a few, and they were all great. And Detroit was really exciting to me because growing up, I was really good friends with Ari Lax. So Ari and I met at the JSS when we were like 13 years old, and it was like a real close internet friendship formed between us. And I would always hear about what was going on at RAW, and he would always tell us about how great Magic was there. And I had never been out to Detroit and explored the stores. I went out there once for GP Detroit a couple of years ago when we did the escape room for Shadows over Innistrad. But yeah, which was awesome. I was out there because I helped work on the escape room, so I wanted to see it. But I didn't really visit any stores besides Eternal Games. But this time, actually going out there and having the chance to go and visit all these famous stores like Pandemonium and RAW and Eternal Games and GOB and like all these really cool places was awesome. It was really, really cool, and getting to see the Detroit scene. Plus, by the way, Detroit's a surprisingly fun city. Like the downtown area has a lot to do. There's a really great there's a few good restaurants. There was a great like evening scene. I went to this place called the Whitney one night, which if you're ever in Detroit, you like have to go to. It's like this house from 1898. It's a huge manor that they're like a gigantic manor that they've turned into like a restaurant / bar, and it's just, first of all, it's stunningly gorgeous. It feels like it's like you're in Europe, and like it's a restaurant that offers tours of itself, like in the middle of like you're eating or whatever. So for fun, like we all went on this tour, and like they're like, oh, here's this like mantelpiece wired by Thomas Edison, and like it's like all these like ancient things. Plus the food and drinks were good, so I would suggest it. Anyway.
I wonder if people have a sense of like how ridiculous RAW is as a store. The number of pros that have come out of there, it's insane. Kidding. Just one store in Michigan is produced like half the Hall of Fame. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Pam, I've heard about for years. It was so cool to talk with her. And it's a really stark thing because I've been to a lot of Magic stores. Like I've probably been, I don't know, to 100, 200 plus Magic stores in my time as a Magic player. Probably more, honestly. And Pam and RAW are the only one where the main thing that they wanted to talk about and were proud about were their players, which was so cool, right? She's like at one point she takes us to like this safe at the back of her store, and she's like, I gotta show you something. And we're all like, what is it going to be? Is it going to be like a Black Lotus? Is it going to be, some like crazy signed card? Like, what is it? And she pulls it out, and it's just a nondescript deck on like purple sleeves, and it's Mark Herberholtz's Pro Tour winning deck from the Pro Tour.
That's so cool.
Right? And she just has that in a safe in the store, and that's her prized possession. And no, it's not as flashy as a signed Black Lotus or anything.
That's really cool.
But that's what she really cares about. Like, a really cool thing about the store, so if you don't know, RAW...
It's not the original location.
Right.
That one caught fire.
Right. Caught on fire. That's what I was going to say, right? So RAW caught on fire like a year ago or so, 2 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And the whole store burned to the ground. But a big thing for them is they collected all the trophies from all these players over the years who have won things, right? And these trophies were a huge pride and joy, and they're dotted all around the store. And they actually went into the burned out remains of the store and got all the trophies, and a lot of them are still standing. So in their store on display, they have a number of trophies, many of which are like slightly warped or have fire burn marks on them that were salvaged from the store and burned down. And to me, that is cool dedication. That is awesome. They really care about their players there.
That is really cool.
And visiting there was fantastic. So I had an amazing time in Detroit. I would happily go back and both play some Magic and see the city more. If any of y'all ever want to travel somewhere and do some Magic, let's make it happen. It'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, I think we've bugged you for long enough, I think. Gavin, thank you for coming on. Is there anything else you guys want to ask about or anything you want to talk about that we haven't touched on? All right.
Well, is there anything you guys want to chat about more? I'm happy to talk about whatever.
I feel like we hit the big parts. I mean, is there anything else you're involved in with Wizards that we don't, that we don't know about? Any passion projects you have or anything like that outside?
Yeah, why don't you tease something on this podcast? That'd be cool. To the extent that you won't get in trouble.
You want to know about a passion project? I'll tease. There's something that I have worked on for a very long time, and it's still not going to be out for a while. But when it is announced, it will be like such a Gavin thing. You will know it. And I think it's going to be super popular, like absurdly popular.
Wow. Okay. Well,
so stay tuned. Like I told you, I got all the crazy weirdo products.
Yeah.
So there's a pretty fun one coming down the pipeline.
Okay. Well, there you go.
You heard it here first. Gavin is working on something fun that he thinks is good. You heard it here.
Pretty weird products, but there's one particular that I've been working on for a very long time that I'm super stoked about. So.
All right. Well, this has been great,
but
man.
The thing about Wizards, it all takes time. It really takes time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this has been great. I mean, we really appreciate you coming on, taking the time tonight, and letting us bug you for a couple hours here. I know it's a long one for everyone listening, but I hope it was worth it.
The last time you came on was Return to Ravnica was the latest set. We didn't even plan that.
How appropriate.
I didn't even
You'll have to come back
that.
more often than us.
Next Ravnica set.
Yeah, that's right.
Speaking of which, start designing the next Ravnica set.
All right, well, Gavin, thank you, man. Everyone else, thank you for listening. This is Brainstorm Brewery, and we will see you all next week.
Hey, thanks for listening, everyone.